Welcome everyone. 6 o'clock has come around, 6 o'clock Eastern time. So that means it is time for my next chapter in Dictation Trail, Building the Future, a set of chapters that I'm dictating that will eventually become a book available in serialized chapters up on Vella. For those of you who don't know me, Martin Shoemaker, award-winning science fiction author, dictation fanatic, and when I'm in the right rhythm, treadmill fanatic. I get really good productivity if I do my dictating on the treadmill. I can burn calories and get words at the same time. So this is our third episode of this, and I am, I think, actually ready to go this time. So let me start the recording. If you saw Monday's recording, there was a little bit of technical cheating went on there. If you look really close, you might have trouble with my seeing that my lips are not quite in sync with the sound. For reasons unexplained, the audio. The video was there, but the audio wasn't. So I ended up with 51 minutes of silent video. Fortunately, I was recording on my headset for transcribing and dictation. And so I was able to splice in the audio from there. But if we end up with somehow it goes silent again tonight for some odd reason, try to get my attention, use one of the Zoom attention getting things, the chat or the reactions, something get my attention. I still don't know why it cut out. So since I don't know that, I can't be sure why it might happen again. If it happens, just get my attention. And if I'm completely oblivious, because I tend to get that way once I'm getting up to speed on the treadmill, then trust that at least I will have audio fixed when I convert this to a video later tonight. So with that, let me start the audio recording. And then let me start the treadmill. Get up to my 15% elevation. Get up my starting speed of 2 miles per hour. And I am ready to go. Period. New line. New line. We had no further suit trouble from there, comma, and we were ready to take down the tent. This was also a two-man job, comma, with Donahue, with Byron outside, inside, period. I took all of our gear, comma, one piece at a time, comma, oxygen recycler, comma, and one environmental stand, period. When that was done, comma, I zipped back out through the tent lock myself, comma, and we started vacuuming up the air to collapse the tent from the inside, period. New line. It was not our lucky morning, period. Yesterday, Hopewell and I had drawn Anthony Holmes for the inspection. Won't go easy on you, comma. was our inspector, period. As we were collapsing the tent, comma, he came up behind us and looked it over, comma, then flashed a 4 to tell us to switch to channel 4, period. We both did, comma, and he said, comma, do you like those bubbles? Question mark. New line. Before I could answer, comma, Byron did, period. Sir, comma, we're squeezing them out, period. New line. It was hard to read Ames's face through the visor plate, comma, but his eyes definitely were sneering, period. After you've been in this course for 15 weeks, comma, you still don't know how to roll up a tent properly? Question mark. Those bubbles are way too big to squeeze out later, period. You're going to have to reinflate, comma, 10% at least, comma, and then press them out properly into the vacuum, period. New line. We knew better than to argue, period. We had both dealt with larger bubbles on tents in the past, comma, but past performance meant nothing to Ames, period. We either met his standards, comma, or we didn't pass the course, period. And that wouldn't be good for either one of us, period. Byron Donahue had his reasons, comma, his opportunities for advancement, comma, and I had mine, period. Every month, comma, more of the interesting stories on Mars happened on the surface, period. If I couldn't get certified for unsupervised surface expeditions, comma, people would be able to hide their secrets from me, period. I never could stand that, comma, and I would let nothing, dash, dash, not even Nick Ames, dash, dash, keep me away from what secrets were out there, period. New line. Yes, comma, sir, comma, we said almost in unison, period. I reversed the pump, comma, and Byron started dragging on the tent folds, comma, until we had a single solid bubble in the middle, period. Then I reversed the pump again, comma, and we started the deflation, period. This time, comma, we both made sure to squeeze the sides of the bubble, comma, keeping it centered and large until it was all pumped into the storage tanks in the pump unit in the base of the tent, period. New line. Holmes had left to inspect another tent, comma, managed to be back just as we were ready to shut off the pump, period. He looked at our work, comma, and he tapped his helmet in an affirmative gesture, period. Better, period. I'm not watching you, question mark. Even if Holmes isn't here, question mark. Are you going to do it when it's just the two of you, or one of you stranded alone with no one to watch over you and no one to save your asses, question mark. New line. We will, comma, sir, comma, I said, period, comma, trying to mollify him, period, new line. I should have known better, period. You will, comma, Ames answered, comma, because I'm going to make sure you understand the gravity, period. I want an analysis of tent failures over the past 5 years from Maxwell City and from every other outpost on Mars, period. I want you to compare causes of failures and maintenance records, and I want you to find correlation between those causes and the levels of training and preparedness of the crews involved, period. New line. It served me right for drawing his attention, period. Yes, comma, sir, period. New line. And I want it by the day after tomorrow, period. New line. Yes, comma, sir, period. Ames was in a generous mood, period. Usually he gave only 24 hours for his spontaneous assignments, spontaneous research projects, period. Yes, comma, sir, comma, I said, period. He pointed a hand, scratch that, new line. Ames pointed a hand at Byron, period. Well, come on, comma, Donahue, comma, start rolling it up. Or do you need a research assignment too? Question. We both started rolling up the tent, comma, a cumbersome process in a Mars suit, comma, even hard suits like ours, period. Soft suits are faster to get in and out of, comma, but they cause a lot more pressure problems at the joint. Holmes had taught us to always choose hard suits if we had an option, comma, but any suit in an emergency, period. New line. just as with forcing out the air, comma, we couldn't allow any wrinkles as we rolled the tent, period. Ames would dock us for those for sure, period. Earth, comma, but we still had to stand and stretch many times before we got the big roll of flat fabric. The big pile of fiberglass rolled up, and the straps in an emergency, comma, I would grab the air pack and Byron would grab the suit, the tent, semicolon. But despite everything, comma, we were right on schedule, period. So we carried the tent together over by the crawler, comma, and then came back we're already stowing their pack, comma, and Martinez and Hopewell were carrying over their tent, period. Ames and Holmes, comma, of course, comma, had theirs packed up and stowed before any of us, period. Sometimes I wondered if they ever even slept, semicolon, but they showed no fatigue, period. And Holmes was a stickler for getting proper rest on an expedition, period. New line. All right, comma, trainees, comma. Holmes said over the public comm channel, comma. As soon as you're stowed, comma, cycle in, comma, and find your breakfast, period. I've got oatmeal on the hot plate, comma, as well as juice and cream waiting for us, period. New line. There was a cheer at that, period. The cream would be soy, of course, comma, and the juice would be concentrate that maybe had seen some orange pulp once upon a time, period. The oatmeal was probably yeast, period. But it would be filling and nutritious, period. Unless they were trying to test our ability to scrounge and ration, comma, Ames and Holmes fed their students pretty well, period. New line. I had just finished my bowl of oatmeal, dash, dash, which to my surprise wasn't yeast at all, dash, dash. Question mark, new line. I took one more spoonful of oatmeal, give myself time to cover my reaction, period. It was a sore subject, comma, but it never did to show weakness to Ames, period. 78%, comma, good, as if he had to ask, period, new line. His eyes narrowed, comma, his bushy red-gray brows drawing together as he frowned at me, period. He wipes some oatmeal from his mustache and said, comma, are you happy with that? Question mark, new line. That was easier to answer, period. No, comma, sir, period, new line. Good, period. It's time you get some practice in, period. Climb on up into the pilot seat, period. You have the morning drive shift, period, new line. I took my cup and drained the last of the juice, period. This was better than I'd hoped, period. I did need to practice my crawler operations, comma, but more than that, I enjoyed it, period. Part of my low grade so far was that I had too much fun at the wheel, comma, and tended to forget that I wasn't out on a mud run back in the hills, period. When I was a kid, comma, anything with wheels had my attention, comma, mine and all my friends, period. Tractors, comma, mud buggies, comma, quad runners, period. In my early career as a reporter, comma, road trips had been fun, even when I hadn't found a good story to justify them, period. Get out in a good car, comma, mine or a rental, comma, and hit the back roads looking for secrets. And hidden places and people, period. One of the biggest downsides of signing up with Intraplanet and getting first the lunar assignment and then the Mars assignment was I did all of my footwork on foot, period. Driving the crawler in Martian Survival School was the first time I'd had behind the wheel in more than a dozen years, period. So if I kind of got a little wild, comma, well, not that, I'd earned those low marks, comma, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, period. New line. But this would be different, comma. I thought as I climbed the ladder up into the Fowler's pilot pod, period. One thing, comma, the Fowler was just too big to drive around like a mud buggy, period. And for another, comma, I was serious about passing Ames's inspections, period. I'd had fun and it had cost me, comma, now I was going to make up for it, period. New line. I reached the top of the ladder easily, comma, but without showing off, period. Holmes and Ames had beaten that into our heads, comma, too, colon. Just because you weigh less is no excuse to take chances, period. You don't rush unless it's an emergency, comma, and then you use your caution, period. In the low gravity, I could have pulled myself up into the tower, into the pod, with only a step or two, comma, but I took care to plant myself firmly on each rung and grasp each handhold on the way up, period. New line. The control of the Fowler was much bigger than that of the crawler we used in exercises earlier, comma, large enough for a co-pilot seat, period. And sure enough, comma, Anthony Holmes came up behind me, period. He stopped just at the entry to the pod, comma, and he cleared his throat, period. You forgot something, comma. Mr. Knighton, period, new line. I looked down, comma, and he held up my helmet, period. Damn, comma, I'd screwed up again, period. At least it was Holmes pointing it out, period. Thank you, sir, comma. I reached down, comma, took the helmet, comma, and set it on the rack beside the pilot seat to my right, period. Basic air safety, colon. Keep your suit and helmet ready, comma, even if you have to take them off for work, period. New line. Holmes said, comma, and mine, comma, if you please, period. He handed up his helmet as well, comma, to clear the tube so he could climb up, period. Once he was in the co-pilot seat, comma, he took his helmet and racked it, period. Then he turned to me and stared, period. Do I have to explain your mistake? Question mark. New line. No, comma, sir, comma, I said, period. I didn't explain, period. Ames hates excuses, comma, and Holmes is only middling tolerant of them, period. But I see that you've already got a research assignment, period. You don't need another one right now, period. Let's just pretend that you spent 2 nights researching all the cases of people caught in vacuum without their helmets in the past 5 years, period. New line. Yes, comma, sir, period, new line. And if it happens again, comma, it'll be 10 years. And I'll need it done overnight, period. New line. Yes, comma, sir, period. New line. All right, comma, then, comma. Let's get this crawler warmed up and ready to go, period. So I went through the warm-up checkup, period. I started with weather, comma, which is always tricky on Mars, period. Storms can blind you and bury you, comma, but the worst effect is psychological, period. When you're surrounded by dust in all directions, comma, even the instruments can't shake, can't break the feeling that you've lost direction. The tendency is to look around for signs and follow them in panic. dash dash, and sometimes into trouble, comma, such as a pit or a chasm, period. We'd had plenty of training on that in virtual reality, comma, and we were all trained to trust the instruments, period. New line. But a bad enough storm could cloud even those, period. Cut off the radar, comma, completely cut off your visual, comma, and shut down radio links, the satellites, or the settlements, period. When that happened, comma, you had two choices, colon, or hunker down and wait it out, period. Fortunately, comma, that wouldn't be my choice, period. That would be a command decision, comma, up to Ames, semicolon. But I knew if I were in the pilot seat when it happened, there were no visual signs of trouble, comma, and nothing on the satellite feeds, comma. So weather was fine, period. Next, I checked the batteries, comma, which were all topped off. For solar charging over the past day, period. We hadn't tapped them for anything yet, period. Instead, comma, we relied on the Gen 5 plant, which was operating almost perfectly in the middle for temperature and radiation, period. We had power to spare for an expedition 3 times as long as ours, period. New line. Next, I checked all the mechanical sensors, comma, including visual inspection of the drive, period. Growing up around wheels like I did, comma, I had basic understanding of mechanics and propulsion, comma, and I've gotten pretty good grades on that part of crawler operations, period. I could see that there was no trouble, comma, and Holmes confirmed my diagnosis, period. New line. So it was safe to go, comma, we had power to go, comma, and we were ready to move, period. That left us 2 more things to check, period. First, I checked air and water, comma, and confirmed that both were at capacity, semicolon. And then I called out on the PA system, colon. This is Pilot Knighton to the passengers and crew of the follower. period. We are ready to go, period. If you've left nothing behind and you're strapped in, comma, give me a green light, period. New line. I watched the console as one by one, 7 green lights came on. Colon, Opel, comma, as, comma, Taylor, comma, Donahue, comma, and my own and Holmes's, period. Let the 8th light remain dark, period. Finally, I said, comma, Instructor Ames, comma, are you ready? Question mark, new line. His voice came back on the PA, comma, I am, period. I'm just testing whether you have gold fever, period. New line. I smiled at that, period. No, comma, sir, period. I am happy to sit here as long as it takes for all systems to be green, period. I thought but didn't add, colon. I'm not the one in charge of the schedule for this trip, period. New line. After another long pause, comma, Ames's light flipped to green, period. Seat and said, comma, Crawler Fowler, ready to go, period. I pushed forward both tribe controls and we started to rumble along the Martian surface, period. New line. New line. The initial map had us heading north and slightly west, comma, avoiding a protrusion of fill-in-the-blank chasma, period. Instructions said we would be turning straight north for a while, comma, longer than my shift at the wheel, period. New line. I kept an eye out through the clear plexi bubble of the pod, comma, looking for unexpected rocks or fissures, period. Holmes was looking as well, comma, and we have period. I didn't expect much trouble, period. new line. Getting a little winded there. New line. So as a test of my crawler skills, comma, this was practically a cakewalk, period. As long as I had patience and followed instructions, comma, there was little I could do wrong, period. So I took advantage of the relative calm to ask Holmes a question that had been bothering me, period. Mr. Holmes, dash, dash, new line. Anthony, comma, he said, period. When you're the pilot, comma, you're in charge unless Nick or I relieve you, period. You can use first names, period. I looked sideways at him and grinned, period. At least I didn't say Mayor Holmes, period. He winced, comma, and I hurriedly added, comma, too soon, question mark, new line. He grinned back at me, period. No, comma, I'm used to it, period. I've had 6 months of not being mayor for practically the first time in my adult life, period. It still feels weird at times, comma. But it also feels peaceful, period. Knowing that I don't have 50,000 lives depending on my every decision anymore, period. New line. Is that on the record, comma, sir, question mark, new line. It's only on record, on the record, you call me Anthony, comma, blast it, exclamation point. But the grin was still there, comma. So I knew he wasn't really upset, period. New line. So Anthony, comma, how does it feel? Question mark. You've been a citizen of Mars your entire adult life, comma, and mayor since the first election, period. How does it feel to be just another citizen, question mark, new line. Check your pressure on your left tread, comma, he said, comma, just as a point of observation, comma, not a criticism, period. I did, comma, and I tapped down adjustment, period. Then he continued, comma, I hate to speak in cliches, comma, but it's like I'm born anew, period. I'm that. I'm finally doing what I came to Mars for, comma. What I did here in my first expedition, and I've had barely, period. I'm an explorer now, again, comma, a scientist, comma, not a politician or a bureaucrat, period. This is why I wanted to come to Mars in the first place, period. New line. But you're not exploring, comma, you're teaching, period. New line. You'd be amazed how much exploration we can do on a training mission, comma, he answered, period. And there's also the long-term investment, colon. The more people who are trained in surface expeditions, comma, the more the training responsibilities can spread around, period, the more free time Nick and I will have, period. New line. So your goal is to work yourself out of a job, question mark, new line. He laughed at that, period. For the period. And I guess the third time for Nick, question mark. Or would it be the fourth, question mark. I have trouble keeping it straight, period. New line. When I wrote up this story, dash, dash, and I would do that, dash, dash, I would have to edit that part to get Nick's career reversals, Nick's career triumphs and reversals and recoveries properly counted and in order. It was okay if Anthony Holmes was fuzzy on the details, semicolon, but I was a reporter, period. My audience counted on me to get it right, period. New line. So this is a responsibility for you, question mark, a cause, question mark, new line. Responsibility, cause, I'll let you know when I find the right term, period. I just know that on a frontier like this, comma, people have to be worrying about survival all the time, period. Where's the next meal coming from? Question mark. Where will they find air to breathe and water to drink? Question mark. Many of our citizens, dash, dash. He stopped and turned to me, period. I need this off the record, comma, he said, period. New line. I paused, period. I don't like sources telling me when to go on the record and when to go off, period. But sometimes your choice is let them go off the record so you can learn something, comma, or let them Hush up and you learn nothing, period. Off the record, comma, I confirmed, period. I tapped my comp and showed him that the recording button went dark, period. I would have to rely on my not inconsiderable memory for this conversation, comma, and then look for ways to integrate it into the story without incriminating Holmes, period. New line. All right, comma, he can, comma. This isn't something I could say even off the record when I was in office, period. It would have killed my career even faster than fill in the blank did, period. But Knighton, comma, we're too civilized, period. New line. I shook my head, period. If it's Anthony, comma, then it's Pat, at least while I'm in this seat, period. New line. He nodded, period. All right, comma, Pat, comma, I stand by. And for other settlements to trade with us and use us as a base for launching their own operations, period. Comma, they're just residents, period. In the case of an emergency, comma, they would be no help in solving the problems, comma, they would just be one more factor in the problems, comma, needing air and water and rescue, period. Mayor Anthony Holmes, comma, I always encouraged people to get trained, comma, but I couldn't order it, period. No mayor has that kind of power, period. New line. I nodded, period. But now, comma, as a popular ex-mayor working beside the founder, new line. He nodded, period. It's a good PR combination, period. Demand for our classes is going up, comma, almost to our limit, period. We're going to have to franchise out soon, period. We're going to need more people, period. New line. So new line. So off the record, new line. Part of what you're doing is training new instructors, period. New line. Holmes wore a broad grin, period. For a journal, comma, you're pretty smart, period. New line. You take that back, comma, I said with a grin, period. I'm no journal, comma, I work for a living, period. I'm a reporter, period. new line, new line. And that brings us to just about an hour of dictating and slightly over an hour for the whole meeting. And I didn't want to take you too far away. Get ready to stop the treadmill. It's over an hour for the meeting. It's still 58 minutes and 33 seconds for the treadmill. So I might as well go full hour. And then, as I mentioned in Monday's recording, this treadmill clears the readings within about 15 seconds of stopping. So I have to be ready to take a picture at the instant where I'm ready to stop. Because again, this isn't just about words, although I like the words I'm producing. This is also about burning calories, getting exercise. And I'm pretty pleased with my calorie burn tonight, which I will announce in approximately 32 seconds. Another night where the story went in directions I wasn't entirely clear it was going to go. I do know they're heading north. I have some idea why, but we got to get there. All right, getting ready. Get the camera up, get it focused. And coming to a halt. 575 calories. Actually, 574 by picture. 2.5 miles in 60 minutes and 4 seconds. So, pretty good. All right. I'm going to need to take a shower shortly. I actually have an audience because Colleen, you're my first person to actually sign up for one of the meetings. If you have any questions about the story, about my dictation, or anything else, I can take a few minutes for that after I get some liquid. And thank you for showing up.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the stories. I can't wait until it's a book. Thank you. We've frozen again.
The idea of Vella is it's supposed to be stories that readers buy by the chapter. And so I can post chapters. Their guidelines are, I want to say somewhere between 600 and 5,000 words as a chapter. And it's up to the author to decide what they want to do for their chapters. So, and a lot of people are doing what it looks like I'm doing, but I hadn't intended to do. A lot of people are doing stories which are basically long serialized novels. That was sort of the old Dickens approach. Dickens and Conan Doyle, back in the day of the British tabloids in the 19th century, they did a lot of serialized fiction. And people still experiment with it today in different platforms. A lot of people are looking at Vella for that, partly because that's how Vella is being pitched a lot. But a few people are looking at Vella more in an approach that I might call a soap opera, where there is not one single story from start to finish. There is a world where stories, and sometimes the stories cross over each other, and sometimes new characters show up and old characters go away or even die. Sometimes characters cross from one story to another. And that is a perfectly valid way to use Vela. And so that was sort of my strategy, is that I want to tell blue collar space stories on Mars, in the Pornell settlements around Jupiter, on the Aldrin back and forth between Earth and Mars, on Luna, on Earth. I wanted to tell stories of characters in all these different parts of my universe, and a chapter with this character, chapter with that one. Sometimes a story, sometimes it would be multiple chapters. So I wasn't planning to tell one long story, and I'll get to those others eventually. But when I started planning out, what is my opening then going to be? Because the first have to be free, so that the reader has a chance to find what the story's about and decide if they want to start paying for the chapters after that. And so I said, well, if my goal is to tell different stories of different characters in different parts of my universe, then I need to figure out what my first 3 stories will be, so that I can have a way to get across the reader this idea that we are going to be jumping around from place to place and character to character and story to story. And so my idea was, I need a first story, which is a mystery involving a first character. And that first character along the way will meet some other characters, because you have to in a story. The second story would be one of the characters he meets in their story. The third story would be another story of one of the characters he meets running into yet another problem, where the character from the first story is now a side character in that story. So this would really capture my idea of, this is a universe where lots of stories are going on. I said, okay, so who should I have for a mystery? A reporter would make a good person investigating a mystery. And then I remember back to the last campaign that we had Pat Knighton, the heroic reporter. I said, oh, and I like Pat. And Pat is actually based on 2 reporters that I know, real actual reporters. So I've sort of promised them we'll see more of Pat. And a reporter investigating a mystery makes sense.
Yes, it does.
But I also had, coming out of the last campaign, the idea of Anthony and Nick running survival school. And I thought, boy, that's got real good potential as a story. Which one am I going to do? And then I realized that there's no reason that it can't both be the same story. It's valuable to get certified for surface missions, so he can do investigations of more places on Mars. So it made good sense there. And then I had another old story, we'll call them ideas, story ideas, and I think of them as seeds. Until you actually plant them and water them and cultivate them, they're not really stories yet, they're just seeds. But I had a story seed that my friend Bill Emerson, the one I call editor Bill in my credits, he had pointed out something missing from all the way back at The Last Dance. I said, I never picked up that story seed. I could tie that now. I'm still not sure how, because I'm a pantser, but I sort of have that seed out there saying, come plant me, come plant me. And suddenly what was supposed to be 3 different stories in 3 different directions is starting to look like the next Nick Ames novel.
Oh boy.
Because there's so much potential in that seed. And I don't even know what it all is, but there's a novel's worth of potential in that seed. And it also fits because, as you're aware, having read Last Dance and Last Campaign, all of my blue collar space stories have 2 things in common about them. They're all first person. Why, I don't know. That's how I started telling them. So now I've got a habit I stick with. And second of all, the first person is never Nick Ames. Never. Nick is the character other people respond to. And so Nick is in a force of nature that, other than when we saw inside Rosie's head, we never see a lot of Nick the person, and even Rosie's only seeing what he's letting her see. And so that's part of my basic structure of a Nick Ames story, is it's the other people around him and how they perceive him and what they're learning from him. With Nick out there, I won't say he never changes, but he's he's constantly being Nick. Heroic bastard, as one character called him. And so this is a perfect opportunity for Knighton to first of all have his own story,
Right.
and second of all to see yet another facet of Nick. So I think it may turn into a novel, which is going to be not the plan I had at all, but as a pantser, plans don't last long. So now I just have to figure out who else is involved in this, and I'll figure it out over time, because somebody else has got to be involved here. We've got our crew of 8, and they're the core, but somebody else is out there with their own agenda, and I have to figure that out yet. So, any questions, feedback?
Oh, I really enjoy it. You're hitting your pace. The first one, it seemed like it was broken up a little bit, but I did have a lot of road noise. So your voice went up and down, but if I sit here at home, it's not. It's good. So.
Well, and I don't have the greatest internet connection in the world. I mean, I've got really good compared to what I had. I've got the Starlink now. And so Starlink can be really fast. It can be 150 megabits sometimes. But Starlink is sometimes, because it's like traditional satellite dishes is one dish aimed at one satellite in one spot in the sky. Starlink is aimed at a spot of the sky that satellites pass across, and it's got a swath of sky that it's looking at, and the satellites might pass away over there, and here comes some from over here, which means it's scanning a range of the sky, and I've got some trees that are blocking part of that range.
Uh-oh.
And so I don't know if I can get a picture that you can see or not. Let me see if I can.
Well, I did get a message that your signal had gotten low,
Yeah.
but I figured that just was more reason for me to buy a story so I'd catch that detail I'd missed.
Yep, and it'll get cleaned up. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is sort of a map of obstructions from my Starlight dish over time.
My.
And the red areas are areas where there are trees. And when the satellites are behind a tree, that's it. I don't have a signal.
Drops.
And the statistics on here telling me that in the last 12 hours, I've been obstructed for 53 minutes of that time, and I've had no signal at all for 2 minutes. So out of 12 hours, I've had 11 hours of service, but it's not bang, here's an hour gone. It's a minute, half a minute, 30 seconds,
Right.
Another minute, like that.
That's not
And
bad.
so sometimes the signal's up and down. Monday, when I lost the sound, I think that might have been a similar thing, that the signal went completely away, and when it came back, all that came back was the video.
Okay.
But at least tonight we had sound all the way through.
Yes. Yes.
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
You need to get going, and you should do more cool down. You got to take good care of your health.
yeah, well, I do go out and get some walk after this, but my cool down is more walking out to the road and sometimes walk to the grocery store, not walk all the way, but get in the car and go walk the grocery store and stuff. So that's my cool down from there.
All right. Good evening, and thank
All right,
you.
thanks. Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.